from Biodiversity Heritage Library. Full disclosure, is an Altmetric customer. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. As Sarah said, my name is Grace Constantino, and I'm the Outreach and Communication Manager for the Biodiversity Heritage Library, or BHL, stationed at Smithsonian Libraries. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the recent engagement activities that we've undertaken to help us discover and facilitate engagements around biodiversity literature. But first, what is the Biodiversity Heritage Library, or BHL? So we're an open access digital library for biodiversity literature. We're headquartered at the Smithsonian Libraries in Washington, D.C., but we have participating institutions all over the world. To date, over 60 participating institutions on every continent except Antarctica. And what each of our participating institutions does is they work to digitize the natural history literature in their own library collections and make those digital versions freely available online in our library portal at biodiversitylibrary.org. To date, we have just about 50 million pages from over 180,000 volumes published from the 15th through the 21st century, freely available in BHL. A majority of our collections are in the public domain, but we also work with rights holders to secure permission to make in-copyright content freely available in BHL as well under Creative Commons licenses. So obviously we have lots of different goals related to different aspects of our program. Today I just wanted to focus on two of those goals that we have recently undertaken some engagement activities to help us both assess and support. So the first of those goals that I wanted to focus on today is that we want to demonstrate the value of our collections to modern day research, particularly modern day scientific and taxonomic research. And in order to do that, we need to have an understanding of who's using our collections and how they're using them. The second goal that I wanted to highlight today is that we want to facilitate engagements with our collections that allow our audiences to share their expertise, as well as provide ways for our audience to enhance our collections. So we recently added 2 new tools to the BHL website to help us support those 2 goals. Both of these tools were added as part of our Institute of Museum and Library Services funded project called Mining Biodiversity. The Mining Biodiversity project had several different objectives, but one of those was to transform BHL into a next-generation social digital library to facilitate the study and discussion of biodiversity literature. So basically, as part of the project, we wanted to add some new tools to BHL that made it easier for our audiences to learn more about our collections and have conversations about them. So the 2 tools that we added to BHL to support that objective were Altmetric and Discuss. So digging into Altmetric first, for us, Altmetric is a service that allows us to track the impact of our scholarly publications beyond things like citations. It allows us to discover online mentions of our books, our journals, our articles, pages in our articles in places like social media, news outlets, blogs, Wikipedia, Mendeley, all of those different kinds of outlets. And if you think back to those goals that I just mentioned, because Altmetric is allowing us to track those online conversations, it's allowing us to get an idea of who's using our collections, what they're saying about them, and how they're using them. And we can use that to help us understand the impact that our collections are having on research. So that was the primary reason that we were interested in exploring Altmetric for BHL. But once we started looking into the data, we discovered that there was a lot of information there that would also be of great interest to our audiences. They might be interested in exploring the articles that were mentioning BHL books that provided more information about those books. They might be able to discover people with similar interests to them that they could network with or find conversations that they wanted to join. So the way that we made this Altmetric data publicly available through BHL were through the Altmetric badges that Sarah mentioned. So now if you're looking at a book in BHL, which is what this screenshot shows, in the header of BHL, you'll see that little Altmetric donut there, that colorful little circle. If you hover over that donut, it brings up a pop-up box that summarizes all of the different platforms that are indexed by Altmetric that book that you're looking at has been mentioned on. And then you can click to see more details to go to a dashboard where you can actually dive into those mentions. You can see what news outlet was it that actually mentioned this book and what were they saying about it, what researchers have been talking about this book online and what have they been saying about it. And for some of the platforms like Twitter, you can actually join the conversation from within that dashboard. You could retweet or you could reply. So it not only provides a way for audiences to learn more about the books based on what's being posted about them, but they could also join a conversation if they wanted to. Another thing that we did for BHL in relation to Altmetric is we created another dashboard that's linked from the BHL homepage that gives a summary of the top 10 books from BHL mentioned on social media during a particular week. So that sort of helps us get an idea of what's trending in BHL online during a particular week. And that can be valuable because maybe through that we discover there's a conference or an event going on that people are regularly citing BHL books in their conversations about it. We might want to join that conversation. We might want to send out some BHL-related material through our own outlets to support that conversation. We also might be able to discover that there's an event that's trending during a particular week that we want to take advantage of. We can send out social media posts linking to BHL books that take advantage of that trend, maybe that trending hashtag or something like that, and capitalize on that popular event. So a lot of valuable information that we can get from this, make it available to our users through our website. That gives you a general idea of how we've implemented it and our interest in Altmetric, allowing us to understand the impact of our research. But I wanted to also provide a concrete example of how we were able to discover specific ways that BHL is supporting research today. So the example that I picked is related to a research blog called Life is Short, but Snakes Are Long. I love that title. It is authored by a PhD student at Utah State University named Andrew Durso. He's studying herpetology, and he regularly uses BHL to support his research. And he uses his blog to post about the research that he's doing. And when that research involves a BHL book, he'll link to that book in that post. And that's how Altmetric discovered that this blog was mentioning BHL. And through Altmetric, we discovered Andrew. So what we were able to do is we reached out to Andrew and we asked him if he'd be willing to participate in a blog series that we have for BHL called BHL and Our Users. It's a monthly series, and in each post we interview a different user of BHL about their work and how BHL supports it. So Andrew said, sure, I'd be happy to talk about my work and what I'm doing with BHL in relation to it for your blog. So we interviewed him, and then we were able to show all of our audiences, as well as different stakeholders, member institutions, affiliates, in a specific way of how BHL is supporting modern research today, and we discovered that because of Altmetric. So that's an idea of what we're doing with Altmetric now. Looking forward, some other things we want to look into. We're obviously going to continue to monitor the data to see if we can find other use cases like Andrew's that we can showcase. We also want to continue to monitor the data to see how it can help inform outreach strategies and collection development. So I already mentioned those trending topics, trending books we're able to find. How can we further use that information to hone in our outreach strategies to reach a wider audience on pertinent topics? Also, as we dig into the data, are we finding that certain collections or disciplines are more popular on social media than others? Maybe we want to make sure then that we post more frequently about that particular subject through our own outreach channels. And then finally, maybe we'll find that particular collections are more used, or different disciplines seem to be using BHL more frequently within their research. If that's the case, maybe we want to make sure that we more directly build our collections in that area to make sure we continue to meet the needs of that user community. And then finally, we're looking at ways that we can present this sort of data to existing and potential member and partner institutions to also help them further understand the impact that having their collections in BHL will bring. So that's Altmetric. The second tool that I wanted to briefly mention this morning was one that we added to provide an easier way for people to have conversations about our collections from directly within BHL, both to share their expertise as well as enhance our collections. So that tool is Discuss. If you're not familiar with Discuss, they're a social commenting tool that you can add to a website to allow you to add comments to that website. We implemented it in BHL to allow people to add comments to individual pages within our books. So now if you're looking at a book in BHL, on the right-hand side there's a tab that you can expand, and in that tab you can add a comment to the page that you're viewing. there's a little counter on that comment tab that will increase to show you how many comments are on that page, so you can quickly see, how big is the discussion that's happening on this book. And then on the left-hand side, there's a little pages box that's essentially a table of contents for that book. It lists all of the different pages in the book to make it easier for you to navigate through it. And for each of the pages that has a comment on it, there's a little talk bubble icon that appears next to that page. So you can also just quickly go through and find out what page in this book has a comment on it, so you can quickly find that conversation, read it, and join it if you want to. So that's how we implemented it. I wanted to pick a couple of examples to show you specifically how our audiences are using this feature to share their expertise and enhance our collections. So first, to share their expertise, the example that I picked for this was a comment that was left by Rick Wright. He's an ornithologist that regularly uses BHL to support his research on birds. And the comment that he left, he said that the bird in this illustration, when this book was originally published, it was believed to be one species. It was believed to be the canyon towhee. Since this publication has come out, however, we now know that the bird in this illustration is a completely different species. It's the canyon towhee. So he was able to use the comment feature to provide that information and to provide the scientific name that we now know this bird to be. And now anybody that's coming into BHL can see that comment and can immediately know what species they're actually looking at because of the information that an ornithologist, that a scientist, that one of our users was able to provide because of this feature. The second example shows how our audiences are using this feature to enhance our collections. So another type of content that we have in BHL are scientists' field notes. And those are diaries or journals that scientists take out into the field with them to record their scientific observations. They're almost always obviously handwritten, since they're taking them out into the field with them. And it's pretty much impossible for computers to automatically be able to read that handwriting with any degree of accuracy to be able to create text that can be easily searched and indexed. So what we've started doing is we've started putting our field notebooks into transcription sites like the Smithsonian Transcription Center and asking volunteers to type out the words or produce a transcription of that field note that can be easily read, easily indexed and searched. Now, unfortunately, we don't yet have a way to get those transcriptions directly back into BHL. We're working on that. But in the meantime, what one of our volunteers, Siobhan Leachman, has started doing is she's started using the comment feature to link the digitized field notes in BHL to the corresponding transcription of those field notes into the related transcription center like the Smithsonian Transcription Center. And she did this of her own accord without us asking anything like that. She just knew that she had been doing work transcribing these. She wanted to make sure that everybody else would be able to easily find those transcriptions, so she used this tool in order to do that. And now anybody looking at this field note in BHL with one simple click can get over to that transcription to more easily read it and search it. The final example that I picked provides an example of how somebody used this feature to both provide their expertise and enhance our collections. So this is an example from one of our volunteers named Michelle Marshall. And what she has started doing is using the comment feature to provide the scientific and common names for the species depicted in illustrations within our books. So one thing you'll often find with historic literature is when there are illustrations, the species names for the specimens on those plates aren't always actually printed on the illustration. A lot of times they're actually provided within the text elsewhere in the book. So if you want to know what species you're looking at in an illustration, you'll often have to scroll through the book to try to find that information so that you know what you're looking at. But because Michelle has started adding these comments, now anybody looking at this illustration can immediately know what species they're looking at. And she's started adding these comments that provide both the scientific name that the species was published under in the book, as well as the modern, valid, accepted scientific name and the common name. So lots of really rich data that's being added because of these comments. So that's an example of some ways that users are putting this feature to use to enhance our collections. Right now, we are sharing this information through our own social media sites so that our other social audiences can benefit from it. It's also a really great way to tell people, hey, did you know we have a comment feature? You could use this too to add your own expertise to books in our collections. But in the future, another thing we want to do is figure out, is there a way that we can use this information to more directly enhance BHL's metadata, for instance? If somebody is adding a species name through a comment for an illustration, can we ingest those species names directly into our data and make them be something that can be indexed and searchable from within BHL's search box? So thinking about some of those ways that we could further incorporate this data into BHL is something we're thinking about for the future. So thank you very much for letting me share a little bit about some of our recent engagement strategies. I think we have time for maybe a few questions if anybody has any. Sure.
Just repeat them so we can.
Do you have any monitoring comments and how it works and how much manpower you need for that?
Sure, great question. So is there anybody monitoring the comments that are being added? Yes, me. I monitor it. So it's a nice feature because it'll send you an email every time somebody adds a new comment. So you can very easily keep track of what's being added. I monitor everything that comes in. One of the fears that some of our partners had when we first implemented this feature is, are we going to get a lot of spam or inappropriate comments? We haven't gotten any since we've launched it. It's been about 5 months since we launched this feature on BHL. So it takes, I would say I spend maybe half an hour to an hour every day sort of going through it. Just depends on how frequently people are leaving these comments, and that would include creating a social media post related to the comments that are being added as well. So, I think there was,
I
yeah.
had a question, it was actually the same question.
Oh, okay.
So are the comments behind access control? Do you have to log in to write comment?
Yeah, so we do, and it's all done through Discuss itself. So from directly within BHL, you can either sign into your account or you can create an account from directly within there. But I think that does help reduce on some of the spam if you have to actually log in. Discuss does have the ability to do to do anonymous, thank you, comments so that you wouldn't have to log in, but we didn't want to do that for this implementation, so. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question to the audience? Are any of you, your organizations, doing open commenting on your sites? I know it's a statement of terrifying, so a small number. We've certainly found with Altmetric that researchers really look at the comments and care what's in the comments. And you're right, it's not usually junk.
Yeah.
It's usually actually quite useful.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. And I've never heard of Discuss, which is super cool.
Yeah, we've been happy with them. It was free, so we don't have to pay for the service. It's something that we were able to implement directly. Yeah. Okay, well then I think I'll